first Gulf War, we destroyed their infrastructure, right? Second invasion, the NSA, they invested in the cellular network in Iraq. Well, we owned the network, and they could turn on the phone, listen to conversations. We could listen to them talk, or they would ping the phone and call it or something, and our target would pick the phone up and look at it. Well, the camera's on. He's on site. Target's go. But there's no doubt in my mind the FBI knows exactly who's behind the Epstein list, who's on it, who flew on that plane.
Who do you think the CIA actually works for? What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Quick reminder that if you guys do enjoy this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and like button below. Or if you're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, make sure to follow the show and leave us a 5-star review. Thank you. Search and say, you know, the Israeli thing's a real thing. Like I'm trying to get a Mossad agent on to have this conversation because, and obviously if I say, was Epstein a Mossad agent? Mm-hmm. He's not going to say yes, but it's going to be an interesting thing to push to see because
Israel is frustrating to me. If they're our greatest ally and they're that important, explain to me exactly what they do to help America retain its borders, its strength, its empire, whatever you want to call us, our economy. What does Israel do to help with any of that? I'll take it another step further. I've got a few years deployed to Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, African countries. Not once, not ever have I been like, hey, let's run over to the Israeli compound and see if we can trade this for that.
Mm-hmm. Or give them some information.
They're not even at our parties, right? Because we can't invite them to our parties because it would ruin our coalitions. Mm-hmm. So while they want us in the Middle East, toppling Iran, toppling Iraq, right? They want us doing that. They're not actually helping us. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some intel support there, but they're not out there running and gunning with us. They got no skin in the game.
Intel from us,
right?
How secretly?
Yeah. Dude, Israel steals from us more than any other country. Number 2 would be Cuba, and then obviously Russia.
Cuba's number 2.
Cuba has one of the most robust intelligence networks. Now, obviously, it's bolstered by Russia.
Yeah.
Cuba,
China, sure.
The Cuban intelligence network, freaking their equivalents to ours, very strong.
Really?
Very strong. Yeah.
Are they?
And they're proxy to Russia, obviously.
Yeah, like
they're a satellite right off our coast.
Are they? So, like, what type of, like, are they doing on-ground operations a lot? And like,
man, and
really,
because of the political climate in the U.S., right? I guarantee you, if the FBI took time to look at the Cuban Americans in the United States that are in different positions, we would find spies.
And we're all focused on China, and it's like, but if you're China, that's the Chinese spies are your pawns, and your power pieces are the Cuban spies.
Cuba has quite the intelligence network.
I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's why they're so good. No one even knows. It's like, wait, what? Cuba? Again, of course, a proxy to Russia. They got their training from Russia, their support from Russia. So they're a pawn to Russia, and they're not as good as they were. Like height of the Cold War, Cuba was doing all kinds of work here. So, their current operations level, I couldn't even really say.
That's
it was funny. I remember we had a Cuban young lady. She was assigned to our base in Iraq, CIA base. She was an Air Force intelligence officer. She had come from Cuba on a raft when she was 16 years old. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how did she get a clearance? How does she work in the skiff? You know what I mean? And everyone just kind of was like, all right, that's, was she not making an assertion at all?
Yeah.
By all accounts, right? She did her job well. I didn't really work with her. She was an analyst, right? But it was kind of suspect, you know what I mean? You kind of be like,
because it's not who you think. That,
right?
Like, I wouldn't see them as.
Yeah. How would you do a background check on her?
Yeah.
For a security clearance. So anyway,
hell, they're so tied into places like Miami and everything.
Right. Yeah.
That you could have.
And Cuban Americans, don't think I'm saying y'all all bad or anything like that. I'm just saying back in the day, you know how it is these days on the internet. If you say something like, oh my God, clearly Tony Cowden hates Cuba.
But it's the same with China. Like we just had those Chinese spies that were coming in that were trying to poison seeds, and everyone's like, well, there's plenty of great Chinese, and it's like,
wait, isn't there, and what was that congressman's name that was dating a Chinese spy that's still a congressman from California?
Yeah.
Sewell.
He was married to her, and she ended up being a CCC spy.
No shit.
Yeah.
Spy.
And I had
and nothing has happened to him.
Yep. Well, it's because, again, like, what's funny about a lot of these games, and you can probably speak to this too, you guys are doing operations.
If one of us at our level, right, with my, if I have contact in another country with a female, I have to do a contact report.
Mm-hmm.
If she was figured to be a spy, dude, I would lose my security clearance like that, right? Like, we don't get to go to other countries, like the Secret Service did down in Colombia and hang out and stuff. You know what I mean? Where my seventh group buddies at? Freaking, and then I don't mean hooker in a bad way. I mean, like, entrepreneur. What do they call them now? Mattress access. Right. There's all kinds of nice words for that line of work. But I mean, that's a big deal, man. Contact with a foreign, especially, and Americans have no clue. The number one and best way, and it's been known for years, Israel, the honeypot.
Yep.
Yeah. That's how it's always worked, man. Israel was really good at the honeypot. Hell, I was sitting at a base in Iraq with one of the old timer contractors, ground branch guy from freaking, Vietnam. Dude's in his 70s and still running around by himself in Iraq. And we're sitting at the table, right? My team came in, freaking, we're all sitting there, right? You got some GRS guys, and freaking, we're all sitting, all the, that side of the house, we're all having dinner, whatever. He sits there, and one of the female case officers took a seat at the table with us and chatting and stuff. And he was, talking about the state of the agency and why it was all effed up. And he was like, well, this is a great example right here, right? Check out the boobs on this one. And she don't use them for a damn thing. She's worthless. He's like, back in the olden days, freaking, that right there is how she could get some intel. Now, you can't trust none of the information she's got. Freaking, and he went on, and we were all like, of course, everybody started getting up and leaving. We're like, we're going to get fired over this. Like, we don't want to be in this conversation. But that was his perspective, being a dude who got in the agency when it was, just starting and doing wild, crazy shit all over the planet. That was his perspective. Like, in his mind, the female case officers, that's what they were. That's how they got intel.
Yeah.
And again, probably an old perspective, right? I don't think the CIA, I'm fairly certain the CIA does not push its female case officers to gain information that way.
What's tough about that, though, it's true. And what's tough about it is, so I had David Zang on the podcast, and he was talking about the way they capture these senators. And we'll get into Epstein here in a bit, because there's a darker version of this, but, and, the connections that could be there. But the way the CCP operates, I'm blanking on the acronym that's for their intelligence agency, but they will find politicians at low levels. So we were talking about, pick the guys that aren't in that club yet. They'll find them. Let's say it's a state senator in California for San Francisco or something. They go in. They invite them over to China, or they honeypot them and something. They record them doing stuff. They'll bring out a nice briefcase of money, and they're so low level, no one gives a shit. They're all like, whatever happens, they get caught. Who cares? But what happens is the people that play the game, then they start getting funding, and then they get.
It's called developing a source,
and then all of a sudden that person rises up.
Too.
And that was actually, I was just gonna,
Do you think like? Somebody at Langley picks up the phone, and calls some Russian diplomat or Russian, politicians like, hey, you want to be an asset for the U.S.? No, like you said, it's ground level. Mm-hmm. And then they fund it and bolster it and so on and so forth. And for everyone that's successful and actually makes it to a level that is, beneficial to that agency, right?
A ton.
There's 100 that never become anything worthwhile. Mm-hmm. Developing assets like at our level is like, the tactical, maybe geopolitical level, at like my experience. But the game is the same. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the biggest problems with our CIA these days is like they've lost their talent. And we hear this in SF. So Special Forces has ASO, Advanced Source Operations. So SF can do very much of the same intelligence gathering, HUMID, source operations that the CIA can, just under two different titles, obviously.
And how, like, who you're approaching.
Right. There's lots of different rules and stuff.
Yeah.
But the two schools, like, you know, FARM, FTC, and ASO, our level 1 course, the POIs or the instruction, the course material are very, very similar.
Did you guys go through the FARM for SAD, or did you get no? So because you guys already basically
now some guys can, like in your PMOs and stuff over at ground, they go through the FARM. And so, like, just like in SF, you might have like an ASO manager or level 1 who can pay and all that. So, like, just like in an agency, there's different tiers of and what you can do and how you can source op. And I always compare us to, like, your local, narcotics task force.
Yeah.
Right. There's official CIs and then there's unofficial CIs. Right. Just some dudes on the street. That's kind of how we operated, right? At that level, street level. I had dudes that were like, I knew since they were teenagers, just because they lived up the road from the safe house, and I kicked a soccer ball with them. And, so by just natural inclination and just a progression of things, as we became friends because I worked in Northern Iraq almost my entire career.
Yeah, you were there for 20
years, man, freaking deployment after deployment after deployment. I started my contractor career with Triple Canopy in Mosul. And that's why when I went over to the agency, you're going to Mosul because you know it, right? Yeah. And then, of course, living and working with my Kurdish brothers. But yeah, man, the state of America, man, is so frustrating because I keep going back and forth, right? Like, after I ran for Congress, dude, I fell off the face of the earth. Like, I wasn't even posting to social media because I used to be very talkative on social media, whether it was about shooting or life lessons or, hey, young man, like, this is my lesson learned type stuff, and I don't know if you want to call that a motivational speaker, a mentor or something like that. But, dude, kind of twofold. After running for Congress, it took a lot of wind out of me because I learned so much about the Republican Party.
You also saw the machine.
It was just gross, even on the local level, man. Like Onslow County, North Carolina, Craven County, North Carolina. So that's like Jacksonville, Camp Lejeune. Craven County is New Bern. The local GOP was just a bunch of turds. They're not supposed to support one candidate over the other. And the chair and the vice chair would have, Greg Murphy signs in their yards. And be like, that's not legal. And then, you could go to, the district or even the state, and they're like, he is the sitting congressman, and they look at these electeds like they're celebrities. Like someone said one time, well, I have the congressman's phone number. And I'm like, I give my phone number out at every meeting I do. Like, why wouldn't you have the congressman's phone number?
Yeah, you should.
Right? And that's what I made a post about this the other day, a couple of Sundays ago. I text Representative Harrington and Representative Crane, Pat and Eli, both former special operations guys, Eli's on his second term and Pat's a freshman. And, within minutes, Pat called me. We talked for an hour. He's not even my representative. I can't get my representative to do a town hall meeting. Right?
And those guys were we talked about that a little. Like, they're transparent. They want to know what's going on. They're having a conversation. Everyone else, it's like,
well, and it sucks, man, because they're freshmen and they're new, so they don't have the kind of influence as somebody that's even got just 6 or 8 years in. I cross my fingers and pray for both of them dudes.
The thing is, you have to play the game, and if you don't play the game, you'll never. They might keep you, but we're talking about those chess pieces, like.
I know a congressman that when he first got on Capitol Hill, he's talking to the then Republican leader, and they're talking about which committees they're going to be on. And it was like this representative was a prior military, and so obviously the Veterans Affairs, military. In this case, he had a specialty. Right, his college degree was special, and it would make sense to put him on this committee. And so, but this committee had power. So to put it in perspective, we're like, yeah, you can have that military stuff. We don't care. You can be on that because they don't care about it, right? Yeah. There's no real money there. That's if you look at like expense versus investment, right? If you're a congressperson, the Veterans Affairs Committee is not a place you would go for investments. That's expenses, right? You're not making money as a congressman being on that committee.
Yeah, and you can't inside trade or anything on.
The Ways and Means Committee, that sucker's powerful. The Judiciary Committees, right? Those seats wield power. And so he told the then speaker that, hey, I'd like to be on this committee. And he was like, yeah, that's probably a little outside, your batting distance there. Let's see how much money you can raise for the party in the next 6 to 8 months and then talk about it again there. And so like these committees, right? So like I'll talk about Greg Murphy because I'm most friendly with him, right? So he, as a brand new congressman, he finds a seat on the Ways and Means Committee. How is that possible? It's one of the most powerful committees there. Well, if you look at his campaign, he donated to all the members that were the voting members on that campaign. And so did his PACs. He bought a seat, and that's how it works. That's just how it works. It doesn't mean, that's the game he has to play, right? So I was saying, don't hate the player, hate the game. No, I fucking hate all of them. They're all dirtbags because none of them will get together and stand up against the machine. That's the problem. But that's how it's designed too, right? Like, let's say Eli or Pat, stands up. Or let's say, I don't know, somebody like Thomas Massey stands up. Dude, they're trying to destroy Massey. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, he gets in a plane crash or something, right? Because, hell, even the executive branch, President Trump, threatened Thomas Massey and his career. And, another one I got to give some credit to is Mayor, right? Like, he's stomping all over the left. He's like, wait a minute, I don't like these right either, but you guys have lost your minds. Like, nothing is making sense. But that's America's problem, right? Like I said, we don't know our history. So like if you, and the way they keep us from knowing our history is when someone like me says that, a disproportionate amount of violent crime is being, perpetuated by, a very small minority of black males. And, oh God, you're a racist. No. That's just statistics. It's just how it is. Yeah. It's not a racist statement, right? Because racism is hate for an entire race. And again, bro, I don't have a hateful bone in my body and never have. Well,
it's not a statement on who they are.
Right.
It's a statement on.
But that's how they crush us from having honest conversations, right? And like we were talking about before we started, man. I live in Harrells, North Carolina, as opposed to the cities, right? So you go to a city, you got a black community, you got a Latino community, and this is another thing that a lot of white Americans don't realize is there's a bunch of different Latino communities, right? Yeah. It's not just Mexican, okay?
Asian too.
Right?
Asians
Now you've got Asians, Indians, and dude, you know how many countries there are in Central Asia?
Oh, they all hate each other too.
Right.
That's the craziest part.
And that's the Americans think that everybody gets along, right? Like, no, man, the rest of the world, everyone hates everyone.
Yeah, China hates Japan.
Like Norwegians hate, the Danes, and they're like the same flavor, Like you couldn't tell the difference in their genetics. And I'm joking. I don't know that the Norwegians actually hate the Danes. Actually, it's probably not true. I was just at Burning Man with, and in our camp were a bunch of Norwegians and some Danes. And wow, what a bunch of beautiful human beings. It was like an entire part of our camp. I was like, look at all of them. Even the dudes are beautiful.
There's a theory that's like funny about that. And it's like why Russia is so depressed. I had David Satter on and he talks about this. And it's like the beauty and also the sadness of Russia is the populace is essentially so realistic with life because a good portion of that country is above the Arctic Circle. The people that are living,
they live hard.
They live hard. They live just very.
They're drunk on vodka by noon.
Yeah,
they got a deal. They got their coping mechanisms. It's
their
vodka.
Reality is just so much more harsh than we used to, and so their perspective on life is a little bit more realistic, and that's pretty true for the Nordic countries as well, and it's why a lot of them. Truthfully, the Nordic countries, they get along with socialists, even though their policies aren't socialist. Like they just have,
We like to say Northern European countries are socialist. They are no more socialist than we are.
Yeah.
Again, going back to if you start
just do the right parts.
Right, exactly. If Americans would take a second and figure out like the subsidies, right? Energy, the railways, that's all government owned or subsidized, right? Just like in Russia, you know?
And we do a terrible job with that too.
Right. You know, and then, but our problem is we just kind of screwed up, just like imperialism. We're like the worst imperial power ever because we like to pretend we're not.
We're going to talk about that when we get to your career too. But
I really, man, I was talking to, interacting with former SF guy, Jeremiah Blackburn. He's involved in the War Party movement, Native Americans.
Oh, I've seen that.
Man, that's another thing. Like, it's like, conquered, not stolen. Actually, it was both.
Yeah.
It was absolutely both, right? The two things can happen at the same time. Did we conquer them? Yes. But did we steal their land? Absolutely. Why was, why did the Battle of Little Bighorn even happen?
Mm-hmm.
Because, the United States government signed a treaty, and all it was to placate the Sioux, right? Just to placate them. And, 7 years of violating the treaties until they were finally cornered and had to fight the United States military. And, everyone thinks Custer was a victim. Custer was an arrogant, overconfident prick that had been lucky throughout his career. Yep. When you actually study him.
Drunk all the time too.
Absolutely, right? He was known to be, a braggart and a drunk. But that's not what we're taught in school. And I truly believe that if Americans, and another good example would be how we treated the Native Americans. The Comanche. If it wasn't for the Comanche, we would have never had California. Mm-hmm. The Comanches fought the Spanish, right? Stopped them coming up, and then we turned on the Comanches.
They also just fight each other too. They'd say, "I hate that group so much, I'll join you guys."
Well, slavery. The Comanches. So here was a cool thing about Comanche culture, and admittedly, I'm no expert on this. So if anyone is an expert on this, and I'm not 100% factual, but as I've been studying, I've been, the Comanche, were probably better on horseback warriors than the hordes, the Mongols. Yeah. They were amazing. They were crushing us. And it wasn't until revolvers and lever actions, because in the time it took to load and fire a musket, those guys could loose 20 arrows. Mm.
And be close enough to bring
exactly.
Right
the muskets and the arrows were not much, the muskets didn't give them any range. Fire one volley, they get in close and would rout, Now the Texas Rangers started putting pressure. But anyway, the Comanche, they had no concept of race. Any flavor person could be a Comanche. It wasn't genetic.
Really?
Yeah, I was blown away by this. I was like, what? Because, back then that was, but
you're part of the land.
The Romans were the same way.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what made
you could be a
so
Roman
successful.
even if you were a Gaul, right? So we like to think America is the first culture of this multiculturalism experiment. We're not. The problem is, if we look throughout history, every single empire or nation that tried to do this multiculturalism have botched it. And here we are doing the same. Why? Because we don't study our history. But the cool thing about the Comanche, just a whole cool story, and I'm just kind of excited because that's what I'm into right now. They had deserters, they had whites, they had Spanish, they had Native Americans from other tribes, they had escaped slaves, all in their nation, Comanche.
One little tribe.
But they also had slaves of all of those too. They took white American, or at that new America, they took white slaves, right? So, if we want to talk reparations, man, I don't know. Maybe the Native Americans should pay us some reparations. No, I'm obviously kidding on that. But again, man, and there are so many amazing history outlets now on YouTube, on all these channels. And it just sucks that Americans would rather watch, whatever cool shows on Netflix than actually studying our history.
I saw Sean mention that when you guys were doing the pod, but he was saying, like, you go to the top videos and they're all just brain rot. Like, brain rot's this new reference of
it's sad.
Nothing. You're not learning anything. You're getting no substance. Like Rome, you talked about, one of the reason that empire lasted as long as it did, 1,000 years essentially, of it was multicultural, where when they would take over a new portion of land, they didn't say you have to do this, this, and that. They said, you guys keep your religion, you keep your way of life. Mm-hmm. You come to us, you now switch, and that, like, wherever you go in the empire, you respect that culture, but that culture is a part of the empire. And what happened is, one of the people that started that too would be Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, every time he
Xerxes, all the way back to the Mongols, they did it as well.
And the most successful empires are the ones that did that. And it feels like, and we'll touch on this when we get into, your career with the military, because I feel like it's such an interesting concept. But it feels like a lot of our misses that have happened with Iraq, Afghanistan, even Vietnam and stuff is not understanding the enemies or
Of course.
the cultures at all.
Man, even in SF, it blew my mind. My very first team sergeant, who I went to the very first push in Afghanistan with, phenomenal training in CO, man. He had worked over at SOT and in Sephardic. Like, man, he ran the baddest fucking training. But we get to Afghanistan and he's completely, I'm just like, and I'm a baby, man. I'm just, this is my first real deployment, right? My first real deployment's war. Kind of cool. And like, if an Afghani, if he couldn't pronounce his name, he was like, okay, yeah, cool, we're going to call you Ben. And I would be like, what? And people thought, looked at Afghanis like they were Arabs, and our perception of what Arabs were was incorrect. So now we're saying, dude, it was horrible.
That whole country
and SF
different.
is supposed to be the part of the military that does area studies and all that. And like, because he's the team sergeant, he set the stage. And so we didn't do area studies. We didn't understand what Pashtu was versus Urdu versus, we didn't know, versus Persians over in Herat, right? Afghanistan is not just one people. Imagine that,
The whole area is tribal. You can get, I've had many guys on the show that talk about, we'd have this group would come to us and say, hey, we'll fight with you guys. We'll be enemies next week.
Right.
But we're going to help kill these guys.
Yeah.
And
opportunity. And you know what? An even more modern and recent example, last year and then this year, my wife and I went to Burning Man. Mm-hmm. And people were like, wait, what? That's where all those hippies party in the desert and do drugs and worship Satan. And I'm like, okay, so I've been twice. And yeah, there's some drug use, right? Probably mostly Molly. That's why everybody's in such a great mood, right? Saw no Satan worship. I saw sin. I did see some sin. But you know what? I can walk to the store and see sin, right? So there's this conception misconception amongst conservative Americans of what Burning Man is, and they've never been, right? Like, at what point in American culture did we decide that we can speak on things that we have no experience, no relative knowledge, and that we think we can speak educated? Like, I couldn't imagine trying to talk to you about how to start a Black Hawk helicopter because I don't fucking know how, right? I can't talk to you about performing open heart surgery, right? But Americans think we can, right? We're like, because we saw it on Fox News, now we're an expert. Or we heard it on the internet, or we saw it, and it just blows my mind. I'm like, just like the Charlie Kirk assassination, I was immediately inundated with do you think this was a pro? Or, I'm like, man, I don't know. Yeah. I have the same information you do. I've seen the same videos as you do. I've heard all these conspiracy theories, and I still do not have an opinion because the analyst in me recognizes that all this information has not been verified, right? Like in the intel community, man, 3 source verified, 3 vetted sources, trusted sources, before I can even potentially consider that information to be true.
Do you think that's purposeful with a lot of because the craziest thing with the Trump assassination attempt, we still don't know anything. Like I've heard there were some murmurs when it first happened, and then there's and then
how about the shooter in Tennessee? Right, the FBI still has not showed us their memoir or whatever they wrote. Yeah, their manifesto.
Feels like this Kirk thing. Like we got tons of information all of a sudden.
Well, and then you know what though? I mean, we did just release the JFK file, so now it's clear what happened to him, right?
Exactly. It's like. This is what I mean. And
this is the problem. Our government hasn't worked for us since probably JFK or even,
I was going to say
even back to the teens. That's when we really lost our country. When income tax, the Fed, right? That's when, Woodrow Wilson, that entire era is when our country, obviously the, Industrial Revolution, so much was happening. It was for the first time in human history, we had these individual corporate billionaires. And billionaire at the turn of the century, man, you're talking Elons, man.
Trillionaires.
Yeah. So, our country is not ours anymore. Our country belongs to very, very wealthy people. And it's frankly because we allow it.
Why do you, with
like I said, are we burning shit down? No, it's because we're conservatives and we're better than that. And I'm like, but the left keeps getting everything at once. People ask me all the time, well, what can we do? Voting doesn't, I hear it you'll see it in my comments and stuff. Guys will say, voting doesn't work. Well, voting hasn't worked in a long time, guys.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we're literally Kamala. She didn't win a primary.
No.
She was right. Like, and we
Hillary
continue.
also technically didn't too.
Insane,
Bernie
right?
was the closest. To it.
And it could be argued to Trump too.
Yeah.
Right. There was no Trump steamrolled that primary, this last primary. And arguably much better candidates on that stage. But, until we, can analyze and give good judgment, I don't think it knows, because it's not like, generally speaking, the American population is going to increase in intelligence. Mm-hmm. We're going to continue to get dumber, right? We're going to continue to stay
on our phones.
We're going to pray to this little God, right? I mean, it's kind of the same thing.
Oh, 100%. Well, that's what I guess, like what I was getting at with that question is, do you think it's purposeful that this information doesn't get released? Or do you think it's oversight? Like, obviously,
Yes, but not always with the full intent, just like the welfare programs of LBJ. I don't think they saw the third order effects 50 years down the road. It was a selfish mood. And like we were talking about, just like censoring free speech. Pam Bondi last week. We need to attack and target and go after anyone with hate speech. Okay, cool. Well, next administration might use whatever you put into play to come after the people who are now applauding you. And the people who are applauding you are just the idiots, right? Mm-hmm. The square idiots who are like, I like what you're saying. I'll give you more power because I like what you're saying. Well, next administration maybe comes in and it makes Biden or even Obama look like a conservative, right? And now everything that we allowed this administration to do and that we cheered for is now going to be used against us. Mm-hmm. Another example, right? A few weeks ago, we got to ban transgenders from having firearms. Whoa! Pump your brakes. That is a group of people. Yeah, but they're mentally ill. Oh, well, check it out. It's already illegal for anyone deemed mentally ill by a doctor or judge can no longer own firearms. But wait a minute. Where my conservative Republican Second Amendment guys out? Any criminal can get a gun. The Second Amendment should be absolute. Well, except for transgenders. Yeah. Okay, well, walk me through it. Explain to me if a gang member who wants a gun is going to be able to get a gun. There's nothing we can do about that, which is true, right? It's like cocaine. Mm-hmm. It's been illegal for a long time. But fairly certain we could go get some probably by lunchtime. Yeah. And I don't even live here. How hard can it be, right? I could probably go buy a gun here. Yeah. Right? I bought guns around the world. You know what I mean? Freaking, it's not hard.
Definitely.
In places where like buying an illegal firearm, you could go to jail forever, right? Like that's another thing is like we have a very weak, justice, system or whatever. That's a whole nother topic, right? If we're not going to punish people, because they need a second chance and this and that. No, dude, you do violence against another human being, man. Lock them up. You deserve if a pit bull attacks, a baby unprovoked, what happens to the pit bull?
Put down.
Right. Yeah. And the argument that mentally ill people can't be tried, like to me, they're broken. That's even worse. Yes, definitely lock them up. Yeah. Like, bring back asylums. You know what I mean?
Like have somewhere they can go to get help.
Yeah. And if they can't be helped, so be it. Right. Man, I don't know, and because like I said, I keep going back and forth where like in the last few weeks, I've kind of, because I was driving a lot, bored paying attention. And then I find myself wanting to pull away. I don't want nothing to do with it. I'm going to go to the range every day.
It's overwhelming because it's like,
well, again, it's like
nothing feels real
until we all get together like the left does when they riot and burn shit and rally and protest, right? They're good at it. And that's why they've gotten what they want because they are united, right? Conservatives can't agree on what, do we want scrambled or over easy? Mm-hmm. And we'll fist fight over that shit and call each other morons. While the left is over here going, we have chickens.
Have you seen that graph that shows the level of think? So there is more diversity of thought in the right side of politics. With people
but they want to fight about it.
But I will say the one thing I guess going back to kind of the grander stuff we were talking about, like at some level, the left definitely gets a little bit what they want from their protests and everything. But I also feel like they don't even get that much too. It's like
what they do way better is Soros's.
Yes.
They're millionaires, 10 billion or 100 millionaires, billionaires fund this stuff, where conservative billionaires give money to their church or back to their business, right? By and large, conservative billionaires are not politically active.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's why Elon was such a shift.
Dude, when he left this administration, I was impressed because I was like, oh, that dude really does do what he wants. He's not afraid of Trump because let's face it, man, everyone in our government is afraid of Trump.
Yeah. And
they truly are.
Corporates too.
Yeah.
When they talk about.
Absolutely. He will go after him. We just saw it with Jimmy Kimmel, right?
Yeah.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. Again, don't get mad at me for my analysis of Trump, right? It's not a judgment. It's an analysis. But I think the biggest difference is their money, right? And I mean, let's face it, in our government, you want something, you have to pay
Money
for
gets
it.
everything.
Yeah, everything. And it's all the way down to the local levels too, man, right? Like you need a building permit or an electrical thing, or maybe have the inspector look the other way. Maybe I just donate to his favorite charity, or maybe the 501c3 that his wife or daughter stood up.
So with the money thing, because if we're getting into really where the money comes from too.
And if I had my way, there would be an FBI agent assigned to every single congressman, every single senator, any of them that are still alive.
But the issue with the FBI, this even goes to it as well. Actually, I mean, this is Cash Patel.
Who's the fucking FBI work for?
Yeah, like it feels like, and actually,
it's pretty
I'm
obvious.
going to go to there somewhere. He flipped, like we were talking, he was on Tron's show saying all the right stuff, and all of a sudden he's flipped recently. And even the way he's handling these investigations, it's just strange.
That dude, man, Congress ripped him apart.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, I get this sometimes. People are like, man, like on Instagram, you can see like if someone likes something or whatever, they name one of your, someone you follow or whatever. I've had people go, dude, I can't believe you follow Black Lives Matter. Dude, I can't believe you follow the freaking, DNC. What? Why aren't you? Why aren't you paying attention to what the other side is saying? And it's so funny because you know how like, the right loves to be like, these little snowflakes. The left does it too about us.
Oh, no, blue sky.
I don't even want to say us. I can't even say I'm definitely more libertarian now. Freaking, I want constitutional freedoms. I'm a constitutionalist. Yeah. Maybe that's what I should say.
Traditional.
I'm surely not a fucking Republican. To me that's an insult. The Republican Party is just a bunch of turds. Anyway. And I don't mean just the politicians. I mean the people who go to like the GOP meetings. And not all of them, right? Like, dude, man, I met some amazing people who I'm still very much friends with when I was running for college.
They just get part of the game, though.
But
the
they're the disenfranchised. They will never take a seat in the GOP, not on the county, not on the state. They won't be allowed to.
I guess that's what I was asking with Patel, too, because it's like, again, like we were talking about this offline where it's like he was saying all the right stuff. He was very open. It seemed like he had a very big passion.
I was excited too, bro. Like I was very much skeptical of the Trump administration coming in.
Yeah.
You can go back where I said, things like, I remember I made a post or something. What are you guys going to do when he doesn't win? Right? Have you thought about that? Like that Kamala could be our next president. And she was close, dude.
Yeah.
Right? Like this was not a landslide.
If she wasn't,
there's not been a landslide since Reagan. And that's because what's his name he was running against? What was his name? Started with a D. Dude was not D. Mondale.
Yeah,
MD. Man, Mondale was a bumbling moron, and Reagan had to give a gab, right? Landslide. We ain't had one since, right? We are split half and half now, and
almost perfectly.
And that is a crazy reality that we have to deal with. And this was a good point that Pat Congressman Harrigan said to me the other day. He goes, Tony, we have a majority on paper only. He's like, we're holding a Republican majority with rhinos who are not truly conservative. They're New Jersey Republicans. They're California Republicans. Dude, they're liberals.
They're bought and paid for.
He's like, well, and just their political beliefs, right? He's like, a Republican from North Carolina, rural North Carolina, is not the same Republican from, whatever district, New Jersey, right? They're not the same thinker.
Yeah.
And on the key issues, one's going to be far more left than the other, or a little more in the middle. So we have all this middle stuff going on. But that's why right now, like you would like to say, and I've said it, and honestly, I had to thank Pat for kind of like putting this idea in my head, that they don't have a real majority. It's not like it's 70 to 30, right? It's like, it's really 48 to 48, and those other two in the middle can't really make up their minds, right? They're rhinos, right? Republican in name only. And so the majority that they have right now in Senate, all three branches, it's not real. And I was like, huh. So that was a really cool thing that came out of our conversation, that I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. I get it. I understand what you're saying. And because he was talking about like the nationwide concealed carry that Trump promised. Well, it's like, we have Republicans that are against it. How are you going to get that? Or the Epstein vote, right?
I want to get to that in a second, because that's tying in with Patel. Is like, have you ever heard the idea of like getting the call? So it's like, I mean, there's a lot of ways it's used now, but the idea essentially is like, when a political pundit or someone like suddenly flips, it's like, oh, they got the call. Someone came up and said, shut up.
How about all the never Trumpsters?
Yeah.
Right? Pre-Biden, you had a bunch of Republicans like Ted Cruz, who were J.D. Vance.
Yep.
That one's always questioned me. I've never understood why Trump picked J.D. A, he was probably underqualified. B, he was very outspoken against the president. So why did the president choose him? That's so uncharacteristic of Trump. You say one thing bad against Trump, man, he'll try to crush you. How did
This is probably a good time to actually bring that up, because I said I wanted to talk about the Palantir surveillance network, and the thing that we talk about money in politics, we talk about this. There's a lot of the idea that Vance is their guy, specifically Karp's guy, where they have funded him the whole time coming up. Gave him tons of money.
From the beginning.
He's been their guy, and now he rose all the way up, and that's the worry. I mean, I guess discussing that, I mean, from what you know, especially too, you're talking about offline, like what you guys were able to do with the CIA. What is the Palantir surveillance network? You're hearing these murmurs of this. I mean, how much is that?
Man, admittedly, I haven't looked into it as much as I don't know if I should. Because I know what I'm going to find out. I don't want it, right? Like, I'm fighting that. Like, that's one of those things I'm fighting, getting educated about.
Because
ignorance is bliss, right? Like, I don't want to think we now have a full on like Big Brother or like UK surveillance network going on.
Well, you were saying what they were able to do 20 years ago.
Dude, yeah,
like you guys were
15 years ago, right? So, first Gulf War, we destroyed their infrastructure, right? They had a fledgling cellular network. That was another thing Americans didn't realize. Europe and the Middle East were way ahead of us on cell phone technology, or at least the implementation of it. So we destroyed all that in Iraq, first Gulf War, right? So they couldn't talk. Well, in the next Gulf War, in the second invasion of Iraq, the liberation, right? Liberation of Iraq from its evil leader. And maybe he was evil. Compared to who? It's kind of tough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, we could, or the NSA, right? They invested in the cellular network in Iraq. And Europe and the Middle East had smartphones a couple of years before we did, or at least what looked like smartphones, digital screens and stuff, not analog.
Could do stuff.
With cameras in the phone and all that kind of stuff. Higher quality, better cameras, way better than the U.S. I remember like the phones we would buy in Iraq, and do SIM cards and, load them with minutes were way better than what we had in the States at the time. Well, anyway, yeah, the NSA could, if you can do it on your phone, it can be done remotely. Well, we owned the network and they could turn on the phone, listen to conversations. There were even, times where like, we could listen to them talk, or they would ping the phone and call it or something. And our target would pick the phone up and look at it. Well, the camera's on. He's on site. Target's go.
And you'd hit the site.
We go hit the site. We know he's there. Of course, that was, pre-Obama, because when Obama came in, all that shit didn't matter anymore. Just drone that shit, right? I got to give it to Bush. And that was the end of an era when, like, if a bomb was dropped, there was eyes on. Man, Obama came in, man, he just started droning the shit out of people. And it was like, man, whatever. Who cares if some kids die? So we were all like, wait a minute. That's not what we signed up for, right? Like, there was times where we didn't drop bombs on compounds because we knew there were children in there. Mm-hmm. So that's what led to like call outs. Surround the place. Hey, bad guys in there. This is, good guys out here. We're going to need you to surrender. Negotiations like a SWAT negotiation, right? Like, it's so boring, right? Everybody thinks, we're coming in at night on helicopters and all that. It's really just like, hey, we're here to serve a warrant,
Be a lot easier.
It was so much more like police work or whatever. And the call outs, man, it's like, all right, come on out. And then it was, they knew if they had children there, we wouldn't drop bombs on them. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, Obama didn't care about that shit. His administration did not care one damn bit about killing women and children.
Yeah. Well, this is like the modern day Patriot Act too. Like I was saying when we were talking about earlier, the end
Patriot
of the empire.
Act. That sounds cool, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's like the end of the empire. Our last JFK might have been that. That's like where everything started breaking down, and then I think 2000s were like really where and then as soon as we get that Obama administration, that's where the political bullshit went all the way up and our overseas war flipped around. And it's like, and now the new Patriot Act is this surveillance network that we're allowing AI to create from all these different agencies. And like you were highlighting, they can see, we have how many cameras in here right now? They can access any of them.
So, in 2012, right, Congress and then the president signed the Modernization Act. Mm-hmm. So the Smith-Mundt Act, I think was like 1948, where it made it illegal for the United States government to propagandize United States citizens. Mm-hmm. It was illegal. In other words, our government couldn't purposely give us false information to manipulate us. In 2012, they repealed that. If you look at the internet, the access to all kinds of horrible things to include, child pornography and all that kind of stuff, right? Like Meta can censor me and you for saying something conservative, but for some reason they can't shut down all the child pornography that happens on the internet.
Yep.
How is that possible? They can do it. They just don't want to because maybe, the conspiracy theory would be they're all either leveraging or participating or some of both. But that Smith-Mundt Modernization Act made it legal for the United States government to propagandize us. Mm-hmm. And no one heard about it, right? If you Google Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, you're not going to find, I'll do this. I'll go underneath news, right? Google, right? Because Google just signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with the Israeli government.
Yeah, and they also came out too and they apologized, which is weird. They're transparent about it, that they were taking people down in 2020 because of COVID stuff. And it's like, whenever they're transparent about stuff, it's weird because it's like, you guys are never this transparent about when you fucked up. So usually hide it a bit.
False claim. Obama repealed the 1940s law blocking government propaganda. Fact check, right? This was in 2024. No, Obama signed, he did not repeal the Smith-Mundt Act. He signed into law the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which basically got rid of the first one, right? That's propaganda, literally the title, right? So go back, there's one in 2014, not long after it, where it says propaganda, ? So what? So, and again, man, if all you're doing is watching Fox News and you're in your, echo chamber of conservative feed, right, then that's all you're going to ever get. So that's why when people ask me why I'm following these, I'm not an extreme right-wingist by any means. I am definitely a capitalist conservative type person on most fiscal things, but very, very traditional liberal when it comes to society, right? Like, dude, you do you, man. Freaking don't hurt other people. Don't hurt kids. Don't hurt other people. You like dudes? Hey, man, marry a dude. Don't care. Don't care. You want to have a surgery to change yourself? Mostly whatever you can do to go from a dude to a woman. Again, don't care. Don't hurt other people. I hate it for you because I kind of do consider it's probably a mental illness. Again, I'm not a doctor, man. And if my neighbor
wants to do what they
My
want to
neighbor,
do.
my neighbor's a crazy little farm boy redneck. Freaking, if he decides he likes chasing girls, if tomorrow he tells me he is a girl, I'm going to definitely think he's mentally ill. Something has gone wrong with him. That would be a big sway in personality and characteristics.
One of the things to mention, though, you bringing that up, actually, is I was listening to this podcast that was talking about this writer was coming out for. He's writing a movie in like the early 2000s about the CIA when they were operating in like Nicaragua or something, or some deep detail. And he like got a lot of information. And a lot of people don't know this, but the CIA does have like a propaganda Hollywood department where they do reviews and everything like that.
Bro, that's the large part, right? Like the KGB, everybody wants to think that it's some, we're screwing suppressors on a pistol and going around and assassinating people. That's not, they're journalists, man. Case officers are basically journalists. They interview and they report. Mm-hmm. Now they just don't put it in a newspaper or a magazine or a blog, right? Or maybe not a blog. They don't have a podcast. So another great thing for Americans to look up would be the Yuri Bezmenov interview in 1984.
Yeah. We've had that. I've used that before on episodes because we've talked about it. How
he was talking about demoralization, so subversion, right? Mm-hmm. That is the manipulation of a population to believe, propaganda, subversion, right? And demoralization. And he talks about it takes 2 generations. He's like, and we are complete in America. We already have you. Demoralization is that state in which most of us are at, to include me, who's like, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah,
there's nothing I can do. Voting doesn't work. Mm-hmm. That's demoralization. And we were there in the 80s. And it was very much pushed by Russia in the late 40s, 50s, big time in the 60s. And we accepted it. We allowed it to happen. And then Vietnam happened, and the hippie movement, the anti-war movement. Just one grand failure of propaganda on our side after another that led to almost half of our population, or at least half of our population, at least, falling in love with communism. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with some socialism. I personally don't understand why all Israelis have free medical care, but Americans don't. Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong. There's no doubt in my mind, if our government decided to give health care for all, they'd screw it up. And we would be just like Canada, freaking, and every other freaking country that we like to say is awesome, but there's an 8-month wait to see, a dermatologist when that is clearly
they also
freaking,
don't have military,
cancer.
Because we're the military for all these countries too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they don't have all this money, right? Like Israel doesn't pay for a dime of its military, right? We do. Heck, I just saw where Trump's talking about sending $20 billion to freaking Argentina. I'm like, hey man, we could probably put that money to use here. Yeah. Argentina's on the recovery, man. They're going to do pretty good without us. Like, maybe we shouldn't fuck with them, because give them a chance to go fix their own mess, because we screw up everything we touch. Yeah. Like, stay out of their affairs, man.
I guess. Do you think it feels like the 90s you were talking about? Because Yuri's perspective on it was like incredible. And it was like the 90s, we almost caught our breath because the Soviet Union collapsed, and the 80s were a fucking disaster for them. And we caught our breath, and then 9/11 happened. And then we just snowballed down this.
Jumped into it.
This negative all while for America.
Ignoring everything that was happening in China and Russia while we were face down in Iraq and all these other silly conflicts that we shouldn't even been having.
Yeah.
Right? The other superpowers decided to exploit that. Because, the collapse of the Soviet Union didn't mean that it was like the end of the world for Russia. I mean, Russia is even after they lost the republics, was still the largest country on the planet with the most resources, right? And I mean, human resources, oil, name it. Russia has it. They don't need us. And of course, we talk about, our propaganda that was, pushed out to us and the rest of the world is that, Russians are starving and all this. That wasn't true. There's people in America that are starving. So if we said, the U.S. economy is shit, and it is, and has been for quite some time now, we are in a recession.
We're
and
in a huge bubble too.
Yeah.
We're in this weird mix of both.
We like to think, the Russian economy was shit. Well, right now, it would be easy for any other nation looking at us to go, the U.S. economy is horrible. They can barely afford groceries. And that's a true statement.
Yep.
You know, and there are people in America starving. All true statements.
Mm-hmm.
So that another country could take that information and twist it just slightly and create the same type of propaganda that we were given about Russia. And again, I hope people don't think this means like, oh, I'm in love with Russia or any other country. This is an analysis.
You're being transparent about what's actually
This is just
happening.
an analysis of information that I've seen, that I've looked for, right?
Do you
and
think
on
with
both
propaganda,
sides.
do you think that the CIA is doing a lot of our own internal propaganda as well? Stuff that we're facing now?
And I go back and forth because my cross-section of the CIA was a wartime cross-section, something they're not actually cut out to do, right? Why did the CIA have to hire, you know, guys like us? Because they don't have a way to produce us. They don't have a special forces course. They don't have a ground branch operator course. They don't have, right?
Yeah, and the guys they're recruiting, I've had CIA guys on. They're
Bro.
just different humans.
And here was the funny part. New case officers straight out of the farm would be sent to Iraq for a 1-year tour. I mean, you'd be like, no, come here, right? Because we'd have to take them and, you know, to things because it would be their mission or whatever. Because we're not the main effort, right? We're there to support intelligence counter operations. And so, you know, hey, you know, all right, yeah, you know, we're leaving the wire. Freaking, you need to, you know, grab your M4, your body armor, all that. They come out and like, I don't know what's wrong with my gun. And like they're trying to put their M4 magazine in backwards, bullets facing them, right? That was very common. Helmet on backwards, nods backwards, right? Like you don't need nods, right? They're not assassins, they're journalists, right? They interview and report. And like, so these new case officers that were being tapped to go to Iraq would get like a half a day of Glock and a half a day of M4, go to Iraq. And then they would be handed off to the GRS guys, right?
Yeah.
And I did a couple of trips as a GRS guy. I'm not saying that in a bad way. But they're the protective detail guys, because the case officers cannot.
Oh, we had Bob Porras on. He talked about it all the time. He's like,
So
they'd come in and be like, "This is our strategy," and he'd be like,
So
nope.
Ninja was my GRS team leader for two of the 4 trips I did with him.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
God,
he's one of my favorite fucking people on the planet.
He's
man.
amazing.
That dude. Calm, cool,
Gentle
old
killer.
school, you know, old school CAG guy, man. Like, and not Ranger CAG, right? Like, because he didn't come from the Ranger Regiment, right? So we always joke that like B Squadron is a bunch of Rangers and it's 4th Ranger Battalion and they're intense and all that. And they're awesome at what they do. But then there's like C Squadron, it's like the SF guys who a lot of them came from like 82nd Airborne. They're chill, you know. That's Bob, man. But a fucking killer. I mean,
Yeah.
a stud. To this day, like he actually was, he used my range for a class he had not too long ago. And I hated it. I didn't get to hang out with him because I was doing something else, and it would have been great to catch up with that guy. Bob is just a phenomenal mofo, man.
He's a good.
But yeah, right. He probably, you know, he was a GRS team leader and did some other stuff after that. So he probably, you know, same thing, man.
Say he's like,
I mean, they're college kids, man.
and they
you
try
know?
to throw a strategy out, and he's like, "Shut up."
Yeah. No,
guys
just
have
get in the
not
back
been
seat and be quiet because I don't work for you.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big things is, yeah, don't get me wrong, the chief of base, right? Like Mosul base, you know, wherever, freaking Tikrit base, whatever, Jalalabad. You have a chief of base who's like a colonel. And, you know, so the way the command structure, the hierarchy in the CIA is the GRS didn't work for him. GRS works for the director, right? So there was some buffer there. So like when you see the stuff in Benghazi where the GRS guys are basically told the chief of base, like, you are no longer in control here, right? We are in control here because this is a tactical situation, right? We're here to protect you. Shh. Yeah, you had to do that sometimes with them. We had one, and so they had to get call signs, you know, which was definitely a play off of them trying to be cool, right? Because we had our call signs. Well, they would let them give themselves their call signs. Whereas, like, your call sign is earned, you know, by something stupid you did. Like, man, I'll bump into dudes I ain't seen in 15 years and they'll call me kid. Well, it wasn't kid like Billy the Kid. It was the kid, because when I got into my first ODA, I was the youngest by far, right? I was one of the youngest dudes in Special Forces, only rivaled by my buddy who went to the Q course with me, who was a year younger than me. And so I was the kid. the kid. Great, we've got this new kid, right? Well, anyway, we had this one case officer came in and he decided to name himself Rambo. We were like, okay, Rainbow. And dude, he would get so mad because like even in briefings, we'd like on the car layout, freaking you got whoever's driving, who the TL is, interpreter and case officer. And so instead of Rambo, we'd write on the board Rainbow. Dude would get pissed, and rightfully so. But he was a fucking dork.
Yeah.
He was like had gone through ROTC and was like a National Guard infantry lieutenant, but he had never deployed, never done any military infantry stuff. So he wanted to be Rambo, and it was just goofy stuff.
First
like
gunfight you guys get into, you're like, come on, Rambo.
Yeah. Matter of fact, you don't need bullets anyway because we're more worried about you shooting one of us. Your bullets and your guns are for when all of us are dead and you're by yourself. Yeah. That's kind of what GRS was. I saw something that Sean Ryan said last week or week before, where at one point in his career, I don't know if it was a case officer or a chief of base, they hated him. And because sometimes, because they would kind of look down at us, we're the meatheads, we're in the gym all the time. And we used to tell them all the time, like, because they would be like, you guys don't do anything except for when we go on ops. Right, because you pay us for what we're capable of, not what we're here to do.
Yeah.
And if you were paying us for what we are capable of, it means we're not doing our job. Right? The sheriff's job is to keep you safe and out of gunfights, and keep you out of orange jumpsuits. Because if your dumbasses went walking around Mosul, you'd wind up in an orange jumpsuit. And then you would spill all your beans because you're not ready for that type of torture. Not that any of us would be either. But it was always kind of funny, man. But yeah, my few trips as GRS was interesting to say the least.
Let me bring back to the idea of the CIA kind of propagandizing within the U.S. Like, because it does feel like that at times. You go on social media and it's like, and we'll talk about the Epstein list here in action once that will tie in well, but there's always some reason that.
I kind of, digress a little bit, but you asked that, right? My cross-section interaction with the CIA is so many new folks and this and that, and they weren't sending their best and brightest to Iraq. And any case officer that I ever worked with is probably going to be freaking not happy I said that. Or maybe now that we're 10 and 15 years later, they might admit that. It's not like, the best and brightest, they were getting Prague. They were getting, right?
Yeah.
Going against our, true adversaries, enemies. So I've joked before that I don't know if the CIA is even capable of that because half the time they can't find a way to the bathroom. But that's the CIA I saw on that side. There's another saying, right? Like by the time you've heard of the coolest, baddest fucking unit, it means they've been replaced by another coolest, baddest unit, right? Obviously like Delta, freaking everybody knows about it. Most people don't know what they actually do, right? There's, the other secret unit up in, Northern Virginia and all that, it's out there. Everybody knows about it. So, is there some super secret badass unit out there that none of us know about? It's actually running the show. Lord knows I hope so. It would explain a lot of these conspiracy theories being so intricate. I think a lot of what happens in America is short-sightedness that 10 and 15 years later, because we're short-sighted, we don't see where it started. So we think it's only happening now and it's new, right? So then we automatically give whatever agency or person more credit than they're necessarily due because we're seeing the third order effects or maybe the second order effects 10 and 15 years later, maybe 30 years later. Well, you know what? I don't really have a lot of education on what happened in the 90s. I was a teenager. You know what I mean? So I couldn't tell you what Congress was voting on. I know there's the weapons ban and other Clinton stuff, and he cut a lot of military. I mean, if you look back at Clinton, that dude did some, by today's standards, really conservative things.
Yeah.
The best welfare reform in our nation's histories, right? A balanced budget.
Yeah.
It's like Bill Clinton's a damn conservative. And that just tells you how that entire paradigm has like shifted, you know. Another good example of how we have been exploited, manipulated, and propagandized. And this is a much simpler example. And I'll just leave it at this. For the viewers, pull up your phone and Google 2000, the year 2000, plus size model.
Yeah.
And what you'll see is what we consider today to be a very thin person.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that it's creep.
Yeah.
It's societal and cultural creep.
And that's why it makes
Things
me
change.
wonder with these powerful agencies, because again, like what's funny is a lot of these people, when the swamp is like a reference, right? Like it's not talking about, because again, CIA is so grand. There's so many different parts of it. FBI is so grand. There's so many different parts of it. But
And it's
like,
compartmentalized. So like I said, I have to be realistic by saying I've only seen a tiny piece of it.
And that's, and even the guys that are case officers on that side, right? Like at James Lawler on, and he was the guy that was operating in like Prague and like trying to get these nuclear secrets and whatever. And it's like when you ask him this question, he's like, well, they handled that over there. And like, and it's no one tells each other anything.
A good sample would be like the Iran-Contra affair and how that actually worked. A lot of people think it's just, Ollie North was out running around selling weapons and stuff. No, man, there was way more to that project. And the president of the United States stood in front of the American people and said it never happened. He didn't have any clue, which we know is a lie, right? But people believe Reagan. That entire affair would be a good example of what's really going on, in our intelligence community. They're doing all kinds of stuff. Hell, Reagan had wars going on in places, assassinations. Another good example would be Gaddafi. I've worked in Libya a couple times, and the Libyan people still love Gaddafi, right? He wasn't a brutal dictator. The dude did amazing things. And you know how I know? Because I worked in Libya and I actually studied Libya. And I mean all the way back to the 20s and World War II, right? Libya's Carthage, man.
Yeah.
The one freaking empire who didn't just challenge, but beat the Romans, right? Hannibal, Carthage, right? Tripoli's Carthage. So obviously while I'm there, I want to learn about this place. And then as I meet more and more of the people, I'm like, these are awesome folks, man. Mostly Muslim, but, not Arab. Northern African, and what a mixed bag of people, from, light skin, European influence to obviously very dark skinned Africans. And so we've all been told that Gaddafi did all these horrible things, right? Well, they made assassinations illegal. The United States government could not assassinate anyone, all right? But we could interdict threats and all kinds of other legal terminology. So when they attacked Gaddafi and tried to kill him because he was involved in terrorism, was he really involved in terrorism? Like the Lockerbie, Scotland bombing was blamed on him. And he, until the day he died, swore he had nothing to do with it. And there's actually no connection to him other than the fact that the United States government said a Libyan operator put that bomb on that plane. We don't have him. We don't have him in custody. He wouldn't sell his natural gas to us.
And he wanted to create
He was selling it to Russia.
I know he wanted to create an African, like...
So he wasn't cooperating. And the main player in the CIA at that time, like, it became personal. So, Haftar, his colonel, one of his main colonels, Gaddafi kind of screwed him over. And the CIA went in and was like, hey, help us overthrow this dude. We'll help you out. Of course, we kind of screwed him over. He ran to Sudan, I think it was, maybe Chad. And so they imprisoned him there. So the CIA went because, I can't remember if it's Sudan or Chad, but the president at the time, we put him in power. So we're like, hey, President such and such, that we put you in power. We want to talk to this guy. So they go and talk to Haftar. And Haftar is still a main player in Eastern Libya. He's like Benghazi, right? Because there's two capitals of Libya now, Benghazi and Tripoli, and very, very split. But anyway, so like I said, again, keep it in perspective. I'm painting a picture of what the CIA, how it operates. And it's not as complex as people think. It's still ran by people, and people have emotions and get attached to concepts and ideas. And let's face it, like once we put our claws in something, we feel like we got to complete it, right? So anyway, they go down there and they hatch this idea. They're going to bring him back into Libya. He's going to stand up this military, this counter, and they're going to overthrow Gaddafi. Of course, Gaddafi gets word of it, goes into Chad, freaking tries to kill a bunch, and does kill a bunch of these guys. We take some 200 Libyan fighters and bring them to the United States and repatriated them, to include Haftar, who is now a citizen of both Libya and the United States, residing and trying to become the next president of Libya, and has been for a long time. Now, last year we thought he was going to die. Somehow he lived through it, and they were worried that his son, Saddam, who is a crazy person and brutal.
What are the chances?
Right. A dictator's son or
name's Saddam.
Is a little insane and named Saddam. He's crazy. So anyway, they were really worried about him taking over. I know that was on like the European Union's radar. They do not want him in power. The guy they want in power, Absi or Absalon, freaking probably will be. And they're all just as corrupt as they can be. But long story short, we were told that Gaddafi was supporting terrorism. And there's absolutely no real evidence to say that, right? And when 9/11 happened, if you look up, he denounced it. He was one of the first Muslim leaders to come out and denounce it. He even helped provide intel, right? And we still killed him.
Why do you think we killed him?
Because he still wouldn't sell us fucking natural gas. He was selling to Russia and China, right? And he pissed off the Clintons. And let's face it, he pissed off the Clintons.
That's a bad person.
I mean, I'm again, no conspiracy theorist, but good Lord, man. I mean, I'm going to be 50 next year, and I've lost some buddies and have seen people throughout my life die. Couple, maybe I think I'm at 6 buds that have, close buds that have committed suicide. Dude, the Clintons have like hundreds.
40, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's statistically, like that's an anomaly. Like we should probably look at that.
And it's been happening since they were.
But don't worry, this administration, this DOJ is going to arrest them, and we're going to finally get justice.
Let me ask.
Oh,
who do you think the CIA actually works for?
The same people that our president and our congressmen and our senators work for. The masters. The billionaires, the oligarchs.
And does that change more often than you think it does, or you think that's been a consistent grouping? Because that's the one thing I can't tell.
I don't know. I wish I could say, man, freaking. And let's face it, man, I know they know more of us, regular, everyday folks, are having this conversation.
Yeah.
People's eyes are being woke, right? Like, and I mean, if you look back through history, man, Matrix. What a brilliant story, right? And it works. People are starting to wake up and understand that we've been in a matrix.
I've seen people get scared by the Kirk thing, though. Is the Kirk assassination has subtly made people a lot. Like I told my buddies that I was like, I want to have a Mossad guy come on purely to just pick it, to just be like, yo, let's talk about this. And they're like, be careful. They're like, you don't want to get on their bad side. And I was like, frankly, I don't care in the sense for me, this is the most important thing I can do. Is the podcast is talk to everybody and get the word of truth out there.
Well, the real scary part is, right? Like I'm not worried about, I'm not worried about any physical harm talking about this kind of stuff. But what if I get a knock at the door and it's the fucking FBI and they have a warrant and all of a sudden there's fucking on my phone? That's not hard to do.
Gun just somewhere. All of a sudden
I mean, and like I said, we have.
You said that the surveillance network, they can access anything and do whatever they want.
And now with AI, right? Like, it's not hard to make a video that looks like it. That's the scary part to me. You know, like, hey man, you know what? Like, if I commit suicide by shooting myself in the back twice and then hanging myself from a tree, right? I committed suicide. Dude, that, I'm not afraid of death. That's not a big deal. And I'm not saying this conversation rates anyone at that level paying attention to us, but they are paying attention that the populace is catching on. And more people are waking up. There's no doubt in that. And that's why the propaganda is the way it is, right? That's why they have to keep oil at a certain price to keep us happy, just high enough to keep us working hard and face down.
Yeah.
They've got to keep the economy just good enough where, Sally can and Timmy can still afford to take Sarah to soccer practice. And you know what I mean? And still on the way home, pick up a Frappuccino from Starbucks, right? Right? Like what the Romans say, the bread and circuses. That's not new. And I think that's another thing Americans forget is what's happening to us right now is not new. This is a refinement, right? Human beings have been doing this type of subversion to their populace. Governments have been doing, and the government is people, right? We forget that our government is human beings, right? Therefore, flawed. We're all flawed. We're all greedy to some extent. We're all liars to some extent. We're all hypocrites. We're all those things, right? That's just the human experience. We're flawed.
Our nature.
We were made this way, right? Or at least we chose that way. Eve fucked us. And then Adam, right? He got honey potted, right?
Yeah.
He got suckered in by, hot lady. And, and Lord knows, I reckon we can all, most young men have experienced that. We've done silliness over a pretty lady. Hell, I do silly shit on a daily, for my wife. I am, I'm codependent. I think we used to call it pussy whipped. I am. And I admit it, like in a good way. I worship that lady, man. Like, not like Jesus, but close. We all do dumb shit. Man, I think it's worse than we know is the problem.
That's what worries me is like, it's these agencies, whoever is in charge, I guess even a follow-up question with that too is like, you look back now on your time with SAD and you guys are doing all these high-level hits. Like you guys are the team that if the CIA needs real shit done, not just like, hey, we're going to have this conversation, like we need to go knock someone off.
And then there's a whole nother level because like we're on the books. Yeah. Our raids and all our ops are on the books. And then there's a whole nother side that isn't. Yeah. There's classified and then there's unofficial, right?
No patches, nothing.
Nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
the guys in Haiti, those ones that got caught when they were going after the president, it was Americans and they had no patches or anything. And it was like, and those are the teams where it's like those guys, but even at your level, when you guys look back at some of the hits you've done, you're like, are we taking out a bad guy for, this local area, or are we taking out a Gaddafi type player?
So, election fraud. I mean, America was dead set against that, right? It's horrible. Yeah. We saw that it happen. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be punished for whatever happened in the election that Biden stole. If he did or not, I don't know. Supposed to be some arrests. I haven't seen it. I have watched us meddle in elections. All the way back to Preval, his election, my first trip to Haiti, as you mentioned, Haiti. Preval didn't win that election, 2005. He didn't win that election. Mm-hmm. We just announced that he did. That was Condoleezza Rice's baby. That was her thing. In Mosul, the Nineveh province, Nineveh as in like the Bible, that's Mosul. Yeah, man, we put who we wanted in those positions, governors, mayors, police chiefs. We did all that to the point in which, like, if you wanted, we don't want this guy to be governor, I bet we could tie him to Al-Qaeda. If we tie him to Al-Qaeda, because the people hated Al-Qaeda. The reason we were there and Iraq was a shithole is because of Al-Qaeda, right? Like it went from Saddam, and your average Iraqi didn't dislike Saddam, right? Yes, of course, the Kurds hated him because he was so brutal to them, but they had a good relationship going. It was getting better, right? Mm-hmm. Saddam had figured out in his old age that it's better to cooperate than it was to try to exterminate them. This is a thing I've talked about it, numerous times. I'm sitting in a restaurant in Dahouk, Iraq, and there's these two huge human beings sitting just down the bar. I mean, big boys, man. 6'4", 6'5", 300 pounds, just jacked. And we're just like,
the fuck are these guys?
Because I'm like a little dude on my team. Most teams, I'm an average sized dude, And these dudes are just huge. And of course, we're like, what's up, guys? What's going on? We start shooting the shit. And they're from South Africa. Well, when South Africans do contract work, they lose their citizenship, right? They can't go home. These dudes had been living in Baghdad since the mid-90s. They were former SAS guys, and they loved it. They were pissed at us for ruining Iraq. And they were like, what were y'all thinking? Baghdad was awesome, beautiful women, parties, because it was secular, right? Saddam wasn't a staunch Muslim, and he didn't force Shia law or any of that. It was Ba'athist party.
Yeah.
Americans weren't told that. We were told that Saddam's this evil human being. And maybe he did some evil shit, right? Of course he did. I mean, he certainly did, right? Not maybe. But we didn't invade because he was being mean to his neighbors and stuff. We invaded and took over Iraq to turn off his oil. Because at the exact same time, he was having talks with Russia and China and Iran and India and a couple of Asian producing oil companies or oil states, Indonesia, about removing the dollar from oil and creating the petrodollar. So in theory, the conspiracy theory is that couple that with the Bush family's vendetta, because supposedly Saddam tried to kill President Bush. That's questionable too. There's not a lot of information out there that actually supports that. And if they ever declassify, and they're not going to, Saddam's interview, freaking, there's a lot to be told there. The reason why he was so easy to invade the second time is because he didn't think we were going to. He thought George Bush was talking shit, rattling his saber, I think he says. Now, there is a movie coming out, and the initial interpreter who interviewed Saddam wrote a book, and now there's going to be a movie based on it. So maybe Americans will see it because Americans can't read or won't read. But that CIA interpreter wrote a book about his interview with Saddam. And in the book, he even talks about how they're going after him and stuff, and how the Delta guys and Rangers actually found him and all that stuff. And then the main bulk of it is about the interview or the interrogation. Really an interview, right? Because, I mean, Saddam, he knew he'd been caught. Yeah. The dude had been on the run for months, He was exhausted. So he just talked. And it's a very chill conversation. I've only seen parts of it, right? There's parts of it are classified that I couldn't see either. And that's where he exposes the lies of why we invaded Iraq. That's crazy. Do you think the American public is demanding for that interview to be declassified?
I don't even think they know it exists.
Sucks, man. It fucking sucks. Especially like the letdown, like I said, I've never had a superhero, that guy I looked up to, but I see other people doing it. And, I was raised not super patriotic. Like my dad was really good, right? He's a Vietnam guy, right? And he wasn't like, his last stint was 18th Airborne Corps, 82nd Airborne. Hell, he helped stand up the freaking the predecessor to the Golden Knights, the 18th Airborne Corps jump team and stuff. But he never was like, you should join the military in 82nd Airborne. Like he didn't have the hat, with the little things or whatever. He just went to work, man. And he didn't talk about it or anything like that, but he didn't preach one way or the other to me. And he also didn't really preach patriotism, but he didn't preach against it either. And obviously being in the South, right? Like we said the Pledge of Allegiance. I believe that Ronald Reagan was awesome growing up in the 80s because I was told that. And now I'm just let down.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at in life, man. I'm just disappointed, right? Because you've seen that meme floating around where it's like, I don't know. I think it's like, it's a cartoon thing, but I posted it, reposted it, and it's basically like, I just wish I could go back to when I didn't know so much.
Yep.
But ignorance is bliss. And I joke, man. People are like, hey, man, how you doing? I'm like, I'm doing great. I don't really know what's going on. I'm busy. And so, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
And I joke like that. And it's probably a coping thing, right? Where we're, like we make fun of things when we're uncomfortable. Like we'll make fun of our parachutes not opening right before we jump, and that's just that sense of humor. We make light of a situation. It's me making light of it because if I think too much about it, man, I hate it. And again, what can I do about it? Yeah. I might as well fuss about the weather. My dad used to always joke. He's like, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad choices in clothing.
That's true.
Because if it was raining and cold, we still had work to do. That dude didn't take off. And but that's a reality, right? Is that like, I look at America and we're fighting with each other. Like you said, conservatives, man, freaking, which is better, scrambled or over easy? Well, they're both awesome and we should fist fight about it. All the while, the left is over here raising chickens.
Well, and the right's taking advantage of their own. I mean, I saw you post about this recently. I guess it's a good time to kind of open this can of worms. But the Epstein list has been, ping pong back and forth. It was, again, this is with cash. Like,
I think they just thought it was going to go away.
Thought it was going to go away.
I think they just thought it was going to go away.
Do you think a lot of that joined? Cash is a great example I'll keep pointing to, but a lot of these people that we were bringing in, do you think they genuinely thought that he just wasn't involved? And when they cracked open and said, "Oh shit," and that's where that reference like gets the call. It's like, hey,
if you think Donald Trump was not somehow involved with Jeffrey Epstein's, you're a fucking moron, right? There's written letters between the two of them because we didn't have text back then.
Yeah,
there's pictures. There's testimony from women. Whatever happened to the Me Too movement when we had to at least kind of listen to the ladies? Like, let's hear what they had to say. And I'll tell you, conservative women who love Trump are the worst, man. Jesus Christ, there's some crazy people. I follow a page, I think it's like Women for Trump on Facebook. Bro, that's the most scary website or Facebook page I follow. And it's probably bought and paid for by. If you chase the money on that page.
Well, it's a lot of bots too. I think something like
absolutely.
Like if you go to 60% of the internet at this point is bots. Did you see that FBI raid where they found 10,000 in the U.S., 10,000 turn-off phones? I mean, this is what I was talking about, I guess, with the CIA propaganda stuff. It's like, I have to picture that we have our own centers that are our own bots.
And that's when you asked earlier, like, is this orchestrated? Is it? Yes. Again, I just think it's short-sighted, right? Like they're not thinking down the road, like we're going to create this whatever society or whatever. I think it's for personal or corporate gain and greed on the more short term.
Make them look the other way while we do what we want to do today. Because you pointed that out, the Epstein, essentially, it was like the day of the Charlie Kirk assassination that they voted through to keep that under wraps.
Well, and I'll tell you.
And no one talked about it.
My problem is this. There's 10 different reasons now, at least 10, why we can't release the Epstein list. From everything from we have to protect the victims to the list doesn't exist. He only trafficked people to himself. He only had these hundreds of girls just for himself. What is this dude, Genghis Khan? You know what I mean? Like, no, man. And just like Massey, there's a reason why Trump's going so hard against him, man. He knows Massey isn't going to back down. This shit's going to get released. It's coming out.
But how? Like that's the worry.
It ain't going to be our government releasing it. That's pretty obvious at this point. And of course, the Trump supporters were saying what? If he was on it, the Dems would have released it. And I'm like, do you not understand that the masters are the ones that's on the list?
Yeah.
And they control both sides. So yes, no, the Dems don't want it to come out because Bill Clinton is definitely on that fucking list. Right? There's even been one of the victims talk about her being forced to go on a trip with Bill Clinton to Africa. Right?
Did you ever see that picture of Bush on the Epstein house? Like that's
exactly.
Throw it. Which that also
both Bushes, both brothers.
But it was W throwing a paper airplane at 2 Jenga block buildings. Have you seen that one before?
I have not seen that.
Let me pull that up.
Oh my God. No, I have not seen that. Is it real?
Yeah. It was in his house. And again, this is where those conversations start.
You remember when he had that slip and instead of saying Ukraine or whatever, he said Iraq or whatever?
Yeah.
That one.
Iraq too.
It's like, Putin's a war criminal. He invaded a sovereign nation. And that nation is Korea. No. Vietnam. No. Cuba. No. Oh, shit. What was the name of that country? Bush? Afghanistan. No. Somalia. Oh, no.
So this is Bush, and there's 2 collapsed towers, and he's got the paper airplane. And I was in Epstein's New York apartment.
That's insane.
I'll pop it up for the viewers too, but
I've never seen that before.
That one,
Well, and it just goes back to that literally they sit up there and they look down at us like we're a bunch of idiots, and they're right.
Yeah. Because
we're not doing a fucking thing about it.
Yeah.
And that's that kind of like dichotomy that I have. It's like, I want to, lead a revolution and fix everything. And then there's the other side of me. It's like, it's never going to happen. I should just go back to ignoring the world. Like, it's such a cliche, right? Soldier goes to war, comes home, goes into the mountains, wants to be left alone, right? And then you get Randy Weavered.
That's what the administration felt like. It felt like we were at least getting there, and then there's all this backlog, and people seem to be like, and we're gonna dive a little farther in that episode, but like people seem to be like, well, it's better than the alternative, and it's
and that's how we justify it. Sure. Dude, when I hear people say, "Well, it's better than Kamala," I'm like, yeah, that's a moron argument. I know. Well, I don't know it's better than Kamala, right? Because Kamala wasn't elected. Yeah. I can assume based on some analysis from her. But you know what? I mean, the Democrats, for by and large, are like honest. They're honest about their intent, right? Like there's that saying, well, conservatives haven't conserved a damn thing. The conservatives have compromised, not negotiated. There's a difference. When I compromise, I give up something. When I negotiate, right, I should be gaining something. Mm-hmm. Conservatives have compromised our rights away every step of the way for the last 100 years, all for greed and power. So, when I look at Democrats, I'm like, well, at least they're being honest with us. I don't agree with them, but goddamn, at least they're being honest with us. They're telling us what they intend to do to America, right?
It's true.
Where the conservatives are saying, no, we're going to protect this traditionalism and all this things, this American dream. And they're not doing it. They're doing the opposite. And that's why I always tell people, like, if your congressman says something, maybe look at how they voted on the same issue or where are they getting their donors from? Because just because they say it's not true, and let's face it, typically speaking, when a politician says something, it's not true. They're lying, right? Yeah. Like that's a pretty stereotypical thing. Man, I don't know. The Epstein thing, I think, that I mentioned it earlier that I'm just disappointed. Like I'm at a point where I'm just like, fuck, man, I'm so let down. And like, I have always been very skeptical of Trump, right? So like when I ran for office, one of the things that Greg Murphy's camp, his peoples, would say about me was that I didn't vote for Trump in the first election. Well, you know what? Greg Murphy wasn't there during the impeachment vote because he was actually an anti-Trumper. So instead of voting, he just didn't show up, right? Well, anyway, their contention was that I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote that year because I was deployed. And, it was funny, idiots. There's this like little local radio show that had me on or whatever. I forget the dude's name. He's like a retired SBI agent, fucking moron, excuse my language. And he was like, you couldn't even be bothered to vote. When we all know that when you're in Iraq, you're on a base and you can get mail. I was like,
you know what type of base I'm on?
We don't live in bases, bro. We live in a safe house. I don't get mail in Iraq. I don't have an address, right? Freaking. And, I was like, I didn't vote at all. I literally deployed on a last minute deployment. Freaking not enough time to have anyone send me an absentee ballot, right? Yeah.
And you guys are in a CIA safe house. They're not going to send U.S. voting.
Right.
That would give it away the most.
Freaking, Anthony Cowden, such and such, Durka Street in Erbil, Iraq. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what?
U.S. voting pamphlets.
That's not how it works, you idiots, man. And that was some of the dumb stuff they would say or whatever. But that disappointment, I feel it for other people. As I watched people fall in love with Donald Trump and the ideas and the things he was saying he was going to do, I was like, all right, yeah, man, it's just like you. All the stuff that Patel said. And then he picked Pam Bondi, and I went, oh, shit. Mm-hmm. She's anti-gun. That chick's a communist. Freaking it has been. Like, why are we picking her? That's not the AG we want, right? Of course, before her, Matt Gaetz, which who didn't think? I actually think Matt would have probably been exponentially better because if you look at what Matt's putting out these days, man, he is not. He's probably a little jaded because he got set aside, but the stuff he's saying is awesome. But you know what? Hey, man, you banged an underage freaking prostitute.
It's on your play.
So I don't really want to hear from you anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So all these people that were like, yeah, man, this dude's going to be awesome. Now as I watch it turn into a bunch of lies, again, it's just this disgusted disappointment. Like, I feel like, when you always see it in the TV, like your dad promises stuff, but then he goes and gets drunk and, forgets that he was supposed to take you to a baseball game. Right? I feel like that's kind of what Trump has done. Like he just fucking lied through his teeth to get reelected. Couple that with, we see how much money his family has amassed in the last freaking 6 months through this whole pay-to-play crypto thing he's got going on. And I'm like, dude, he's exactly what they said he was, a New York Democrat, used to playing the system to get what he wants.
And I also say, too, like, again, that idea is like, someone told Patel or Putin quote that we were talking about, I think it was offline before we got started, where Putin essentially says, like, every president comes in and they get to talk from, and that's why I asked, like, who's the CIA work for? Who's the FBI work for? It's like, because it's none of these guys. Yeah. And you get into office and they sit you down and they go, we're going to go invade this country. We want to take out this guy. This guy actually works for us. You didn't know that. UFOs are real, whatever. Like Epstein, whatever. Like all the crazy shit they unload and they go, and you have to play ball or we'll have issues. And they say that to all these people at these levels. And that's like a Patel. It's like, how do you, and you can look at him too. His look just looks different. Like he looks exactly what you're saying, where he looks defeated now. He had this like, he had the crazy look, he did, but it was like the crazy look of a guy where you're like, he's going to go get shit done.
Yeah. And we were excited. Like when Patel talked, man, I was like, hell yeah. I kept Trump at a little bit of arm's distance, but Patel was one of them that I was like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. Tulsi, who I personally don't think is qualified for the position they put her in, but she has done a great job surrounding herself by some phenomenal people. Well, if you remember the whole, hey, we got to go crush Iran because they have nuclear weapons. They're going to have nuclear weapons tomorrow. We've been saying that about Iran for 30 fucking years. And just 4 weeks prior, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, all of the intelligence agency, at her fingertips said Iran is nowhere near making a nuclear bomb. And President Trump went, she didn't know what the fuck she's talking about. Yeah. Threw her under the bus. I lost a lot of respect for her because she should have fucking resigned and said, you know what, fuck
I hear there's a lot of infighting that's happening right now. And that's my question.
I have a very good friend of mine who works for the DOD. And he's struggling.
Yeah.
He's struggling because he is a good motherfucker. Like,
I think a lot of them are. I still think Patel is. I just think he's...
he looks, right? He looks conflicted. Yeah. He can't even hide it.
And that was my original
it's
worry.
That disappointment. And when I see other people that love the idea of Trump and all his stuff, just, and so many of them won't even admit it, right? They're still in denial.
They just want to own the liberals.
Right. Let's own the liberals, right? Like you dumbasses, freaking whatever you do to them, they're going to do to us.
Yeah.
Like we have to stop this circle. And Trump is horrible about it, man. He's such a fucking drama queen. As much as I don't really like Reagan, we need a Reagan. We need I think Vivek would have been a fucking amazing president.
Yeah.
So intelligent.
Well, Vance plays that part, but that's what scares me is because Vance, again,
let's face it, the vice president of the United States is a fucking paper tiger if there ever was.
But he's going to be the next guy. And that's what I'm saying is like him
I don't know if he's going to be the next president or not. If this one keeps going the way it's going, our next president is going to be a Gavin Newsom or something else with a D next to them. And that's a real thing. That's what I think. I honestly think the legacy of this president is going to be a bunch of lies. And they handed it to the Democrats.
I would the only thing is I think Vance comes off a little bit better and they're going to use the same playing card. And like by the end of the Trump presidency, they might say, hey, now that he's gone, like we can do this. But like I said, with Palantir being in his back pocket, like I don't know if I can have that trust on that because it's like, what are we?
I know. Yeah.
Let me ask with the Epstein list too. Like, who do you think was behind that? What do you think that was?
I think it's just as plausible that, Epstein was the mastermind to the further extreme that it's being ran by another nation. Mm-hmm. It could be anywhere in between those two. I don't know. But I know there's no doubt in my mind.
It's a real thing.
If you, need to watch what I say. I was going to say something along the lines, if you gave me a Connex in 4 hours with Kash Patel, I'll tell you. Right? Could you imagine an opportunity to interrogate?
Oh, yeah.
Fully interrogate, like a real interrogation, like a tactical interview type interrogation.
Yeah.
Any of these guys, right? Like, what would we learn about the way America really works if you could spend a few hours interrogating, tactically interviewing a senior citizen, or a senior citizen, senior senator?
Yeah.
Right? Dude, American secrets, the secrets of the way our government really runs would be awesome to learn. But there's no doubt in my mind the FBI knows exactly who's behind the Epstein list, who's on it, who flew on that plane. And everybody's talking about the fucking plane and island. The dude's mansion in Manhattan was the largest personal residence in New York City.
Yeah.
And you mean to tell me this dude who started out as a fucking teacher at some local school went from that? Come on, man. You guys are full of shit. Patel's full of shit. They're full of shit. They're lying.
Maxwell, too. Her father was a part of the original group that started the CIA. With the
they call them legacies, right? The legacy families.
And the scary thing about this, too, I mean, to be completely transparent on it as well, I mean, a lot of the conversation is around Mossad and Israel. And
it's quite plausible.
And, well, a lot of that number adds up, too. Like, he's talked about it, too. There's politicians that have legitimately in their contracts, and Texas actually just passed a similar law, that, like, they'll get all this money, but they have to vote in line with Israel. And it's like a legitimate contract. Yeah. And they have to sign it, and so then they never come out
They're
against
traitors.
And all this money goes towards them and stuff.
Yeah. Because everybody's focused on AIPAC right now. AIPAC is not the controller of Israeli money to our politicians, right? It's huge. Yeah. Huge, but it's not the number one. It sucks, man. And, it just sucks. Like, how did we get here? Well, I know how we got here. Because the average American cared more about getting Sally to soccer practice.
Yep.
I would ask people like, hey, you want to come to the GOP meeting in Onslow County Tuesday night? Oh, no, I got to take the kids to, whatever. And that's what parents are supposed to do. But at what point do we stop interacting and being part of the civil process? I don't think we ever were part of the process. Like, we like to think that like the founding fathers were just local cool dudes, right? Again, you want to talk about U.S. history, man? Another fucking completely made up character in the United States history is George Washington.
100%, yeah.
That dude was one of the worst military leaders ever, right? He didn't win the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War was won in the South. Mm-hmm. That's,
And British just not caring enough because they had to fight.
Well, every other country. It was actually the first Civil War because that war in the South during the Revolutionary was pitted against loyalists and patriots. Mm-hmm. And the Brits, they just screwed it up. And also the Brits just ran out of money. And it was like, that colony or these other colonies that actually make us money. Because we didn't.
And they were fighting France at the time, too.
They were broke. They were, they're getting their ass beat by French.
Yeah.
Just south of their actual island. They stopped caring about America. But America likes to portray this George Washington character as if he was just this brilliant leader and all this kind of stuff. George Washington freaking screwed up, even all the way back to when he was fighting Indians and was a British leader. He got stomped, So he was not this amazing leader that everyone talks about. Like another made up story about George Washington is that he turned down being a king. Mm-hmm. It never happened. He was never, not once, offered kingship of these United States of America. It would never happen. It's a made-up story.
But it's good propaganda.
And again, Americans don't know any better because we just listen to what we were told, and go, oh, yeah, we believe that now. When you actually study history, like American history is a bunch of lies in very many ways, right? Like, it was in textbooks that, the Revolutionary War was won by, the fighting in the South. They had pretty much given up on the North. And so the last part of the Brits, they were like, Cornwallis came back after his wife died. And all he cared about was going back to war, right? Like this is how he was going to deal with his grief. So Cornwallis came back to the United States, an entirely different general with a different type of mission, and it was just win, right? It wasn't placate the loyalists or the colonists. It was fucking win. He was a different person. Well, yeah, again, man, it just goes back to, in the early 1970s, during the whole civil rights movement in the United States, there was a big push to remove that part of U.S. history that our Revolutionary War was won by Southerners, because Southerners were bad, because we were also the Southerners were also the slavery.
Confederate. Yeah.
And if you look at this history of slavery in the United States, the way it is portrayed to us is completely wrong too, and why it persisted as long as it did.
It was going to die out. Like that.
It was dying. Yeah, there was a resurgent in like in the 1830s, 1840s, whereas the next and third generation plantation owners, they started putting up a fight, right? And that's what ultimately led to Lincoln and our Civil War. But it's not portrayed properly. And how do we know? Because they used to write stuff down. Crazy, right? Just like once you put it on the internet, it's there forever, right? But they used to write stuff down. People used to keep detailed chronological happenings in government, and we had historians, people who wrote. That's what they did. So if you actually study, American history, man, it's just like, it's so eye-opening, know. And I'm like, dude, if Americans would just study our history and world history, because we also we have this bias that all this that's happening today, intelligence services and all that stuff, is like some kind of new thing. Dude, intelligence and espionage has existed since we have. Yeah. And in many ways, when it was all human, face to face, it was way better, because we saw that when especially during the Clinton administration, it was a lot of, they detuned the CIA. And they couldn't go out and do human, so it all became like SIGINT and then the internet and all that kind of stuff. And we didn't have case officers that had that skill who could just go out and talk to people and all that. So we had lost a lot of that, just because we thought the new age was going to be technological, signal intelligence, IT stuff, all that. And so that skill was lost a little bit. That art, it's an art. It's not even a skill, right? Being able to develop sources and all that. It's an art. And so I guess, a good example is the way it's portrayed, like in the Game of Thrones. Yeah. Remember the bald guy? Yeah. He had his little birdies. Yeah. Yeah. It's been that way since the dawn of time, right? Since humans have been a thing, we've been spying on each other. And, heck, in many ways, sometimes it was very overt diplomacy, right? State Department. Why does the CIA put its officers underneath state, right? Yeah. Because they get access and placement to other governments, right? And now they can sit in these meetings and all this kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And interact. It's access and placement, And we, like I said, Americans, it's just like, it's frustrating to me sometimes because I'm certainly not the most educated person on U.S. history, right? But what I have educated myself on, has led me to just be like, wow, if Americans would simply educate themselves, and we can do it now. We don't have to go take, sixth grade social studies to learn about, or U.S. history or Western Civ. We can actually look at it and what happened. But we don't, so we won't. And it's sad.
A question, again, the Israeli topic is just so interesting because obviously it's getting talked about a lot right now and people are actually seeing how much money is getting involved. I tend to I think it's, and again, I would probably lean in the camp where Epstein definitely had Mossad ties just because I think likely.
It was bigger than one dude, bro. Come on, man. Yeah. That dude did not do all that by himself.
I think it was likely Mossad, and then the CIA obviously saw what was going down and said, all right, we'll turn the eye or anything like that because there's just too many cross connections. There's just too much who's there. Regardless, though, when I talk about Israel, I say a huge thing is that I think, and obviously it's a touchy ground because you get some interesting folks that want to come into and start talking about that, but I think a separation point is probably Netanyahu. We talk a lot about Putin. We talk a lot about Xi. I'd be curious in like the most blanket statement, do you think Netanyahu in his own way is a threat to the U.S. or undermines the U.S.?
Probably so. Probably so. I am reserved on commenting on what I think about with Israel, because right now it's trending, right?
For sure.
So it's very easy to get sucked into whatever the internet is telling me is happening and the influence that Israel and BB has, right? Like if I go on Candace Owens right now, I guarantee you she's got a post within the last 24 hours
killed Charlie Kirk
of how,
in this.
right, yeah. You know, I guess, and maybe it's my bias that I'm like, I don't know. Like, I didn't view Charlie Kirk as having that much power.
No.
So, you know what I mean? If the Israeli government was going to off somebody, then it just seems like there would be other people out there, right? Well, let's face it. All right, let's theorize. And again, theorizing. Let's say Israel is behind the Epstein list. Well, if it goes public, they lose their leverage. Well, who is the number one person trying to release it? Representative Massey. Straight behind it with, and Lord knows, I never thought I would be a fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I thought for years that chick was she was the AOC, the bumbling idiot. Well, goddamn, she's come out as, and excuse my language, Lord knows. Marjorie Taylor Greene has come out and she is saying some very intelligent stuff. Like she's like a whole new person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, did they replace her? Like, what's going on here? And so if they lose that leverage, right? So it would, in theory, it would make more sense for them to off them too than Charlie Kirk. Yeah. But then again, I didn't watch Charlie Kirk. I don't watch a lot of that kind of stuff, right? Like
he was a proponent of Israel. He started kind of turning the corner of conversation.
Not enough for them to go, yeah, we should kill him in public.
And like, I've heard the nuanced take of this is that if you're Israel right now, you're using this as an opportunity to, because the past 3 years, people have kind of like really, because it's transparent. There's a war, and we're signing bills all the time where all this money is going, and we're realizing like
people are paying attention.
We're seeing we can't have conversations.
Not new.
Yeah,
all this pro-Israeli stuff, man. This ain't new. This stuff's been going on since the 80s.
You know, you see these politicians have to dance around, you know, the conversation of, you know, Israel and this and that, or they say one thing, then they go vote behind it. Like AOC is a great example of this.
Yeah.
The main thing with that is that they if you're Mossad or something and you're operating on this, you're using this as an opportunity to make. It's like with all conspiracies, like the CIA used to do this. They'd pump in conspiracies that were so crazy that when people would be like, "Well, you guys shot JFK," they'd be like, "No, you guys are also saying the Earth's flat." Yeah, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, yeah, crazy."
Yeah, I think the colloquial term now is gaslighting, right?
Yes.
And but you know what? Like humans do that. You know, we used to say, you know, lie, deny, make counter accusations, right? That was Sears School. You know, lie, deny, make counter accusations. That's called gaslighting now.
Yeah.
So that's not a new human phenomenon either, right? Like, no, I didn't do that, but Bill over here, you wouldn't believe what he did, right? Deflect, you know?
Good way to change the tide of conversation.
Exactly. And of course that's what we're doing. Of course that's what they're doing. I mean, you can watch any interview on Capitol Hill and they're like, that's not the question I asked you. Did you or did you not do X? Well, let me da-da-da. It's a yes or no question, right? Like, dude, if you had a dime for every time someone in a congressional interview answered a yes or no question, you'd have 0 dimes. They won't do it. You can't get these slimy, spineless bastards to answer a question. Yeah. We saw it with Patel, right? Patel, one thing he did do good last week on Capitol Hill was, he crushed the left. Watch him own the left. Like, actually, if you watch most of the footage, senators on both sides of the aisle makes Kash Patel look like a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
But if you take clips and this and that where he fires back something witty, right, which most of his witty statements I just thought were asinine.
Yeah.
Then you can block it off and then put it on your, you know, Republican conservative website and be like, or Instagram page and be like, yo, he just owned Senator such and such. And no, he did not. Senator such and such crushed his ass, Rican, but you didn't bother to go on C-SPAN and watch the entire interview.
And they know he can't say shit. That's the thing. Kash used to be way quicker than that, but I was watching the same thing and I was like, he's just sitting there. And it's like, I know you know what you can be like, what you can be saying back right now, and you're just not. And it's just But the reason I asked that question is because I think the biggest thing we see, again, on Sean's show, you mentioned the 7-country war. Essentially, that's what was getting set up, and we'll probably rehash that here as we dive into your time in the military. But Israel, a lot of that worked for them, but Iran's the biggest one. Like, we're continually getting pushed towards war with Iran, and it's the last thing we want. Like, you ever seen Iran before the Iranian Revolution and after, like the two pictures? And it's like Iran.
We did that.
It was a Western country, essentially.
We did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
was an ally. Yeah. Very Westernized. The entire Middle East was moving in that direction. You know, my stepmother, amazing human being. She became one of my very best friends, man. She was awesome. She was from California. She was like Martha Stewart on fucking meth. I mean, just amazing human being, right? Her and 3 of her female friends went and partied in Kabul. And she used to joke, like in the late 60s. She had pictures. Yeah, cars and chicks in skirts.
Yeah, they wore
no burqas, no hijab, nothing. And she would make fun. She was like, I was in Afghanistan decades before your ass ever got there. And I was like, and you went in Afghanistan, and I'm sure it was much cooler than the one I went to. Now, don't get me wrong, there was some Hindu Kush floating around when I was there, but back in those days, I wouldn't partake in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where I'm, I guess some guys did here and there, I mean, but yeah, the entire Middle East, man, Pakistan, Afghanistan, that's Central Asia, it's not Middle East. Yemen, it was also Westernized.
Yeah.
At the time, it was really like the kingdom, like Saudi Arabia and stuff. They were the staunch, we can always question whether or not they're our allies.
Well, because every country that's our allies, I mean, we were allied with Osama bin Laden and the Taliban. And then
that's crazy, right?
And it flips right around too. I mean, that's
and talking about propaganda, right? Like hate speech. Well, when the towers were attacked, America and many, especially on the right, would say horrible things, like like the old Vietnam, kill them all, let them God sort them out. That redneck, ignorant fucking mentality, right? I guess it's not just limited to rednecks, just ignorant, right? Like that's how it was. You could find so much hate against Muslims. And it was extremists, right? Just like, are Christians by and large bad? Certainly not. Human beings, by and large, are not evil people. Yeah, we all do fucked up shit, but we're not out here trying to, the average person isn't trying to kill each other, right? Trying to make a living, have a family, right? That's in our genetics, right? Procreate.
And live by your values, but the basic values.
Right. Like we all know the 10 Commandments, is kind of universal, right? Yeah. Like most people are born understanding the 10 Commandments, you know what I mean? To some level. And every religion has some form of the 10 Commandments. I'll never forget this, man. I was down on the border. Went to see the border, visited with some Border Patrol friends of mine on the down low. Like they would not meet me officially because, Biden was in charge. But I went down there with Colonel Stuart Scheller, right? The Marine colonel who was put in a brig for speaking out against the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And Stuart is a good motherfucker, man. I like that dude a lot. And you got Marines out there who be like, yeah, but what he did was right, but what he did was all wrong. And I was like, no, dude, he's what we need.
Yeah.
Someone who'll stand up, willing to, Stu was on track to become a fucking general. He had a stellar career. Everyone who ever worked for him said like, oh no, that he's legit. He's the Marine Corps officer. And in my very first face-to-face meet with Stu, we talked about this when we were on with JT and Evan down at Black Rifle. When we came down here to Texas to go to the border, we also went back up, did an episode with JT and Evan on theirs. But anyway, we were talking about the 10 Commandments and religion and this and that. And I said something along the lines of, every religion has a version of 10 Commandments. And I was like, even Satanism He's like, what? I was like, have you ever looked up the tenets of Satanism?
Yeah. It's not what people think the religion
Not
is.
even close, right? Like for people who've never bothered. And like I said, you have to know your enemy, right?
Yeah.
Evil and Satan is my enemy, right? Well, and always will be, number one, right? I'm always, even on a personal level, have to fight that sort of thing, right? But for the viewers, let's see. The tenets of Satanism. It's probably going to be some horrible shit. We're going to have to sacrifice people, right? So yeah, the 7 tenets of Satanism. And this is from the satanictemple.com, right? Freaking, right? One should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. Wait, what? I must be on the wrong page. No, this is Satanism. Yeah, on the right page. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over all laws and institutions. What? One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. In other words, don't rape. Okay. Sounds like a 10 commandment to me. And it goes on, right? The freedoms of others should be respected, included the freedom to offend. This is the fucking tenets of Satanism, bro. Like, so I was amazed when I read them for the first time. So when I said this dude, man, he pulled them up. And he was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Because the original Satanism as a religion was originally supposed to be, it wasn't like an actual prayer towards Satan. It was like a religion and supposed to be in juxtaposition to the Catholic Church because of how strict and overbearing they became. And it was supposed to be like a...
And then they demonized Lucifer.
The whole thing, this is,
and that's the problem with religion versus faith.
Yeah, it can
right.
get taken.
As soon as it's like we were talking about this before, right? The 10%. You mean to tell me the creator of all told someone at the church that they needed to make sure everyone gives 10% of their income? Come on, man. God didn't say that, right? That's a human thing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the problem with these books.
You're an all-powerful being. That's the last thing you give a shit about. It's like any earthly.
He needs us to give money.
Yeah.
Wait.
Or sacrifice an animal.
Yeah, he needs a sacrifice because what money would be, a sacrifice, right?
Or even prayer to him. I always thought that was nuts too because I'm like, you guys are doing prayer all the time. Like, no entity like that would demand like that type of respect. And they would, the idea of like,
hey, he's got other shit going on.
Yeah, there's a difference between like spiritual feeling.
He's kind of busy.
Yeah,
you know?
There's a difference between like spiritual feeling, like the idea of like meditation and stuff, versus like
connectivity,
just general prayer, like just like looking.
Yeah.
Like,
well, we talked about earlier, like these plant medicine journeys and stuff, and a lot of guys coming back, especially from the really powerful stuff like Ibogaine. It's like, whoa. It opens your eyes, opens your mind to the realities of, that we all, these energies are connected and that there is a creator.
Yep.
And that creator is so much more intelligent than us, right? That we can't even try to fathom, right? Like, I mean, we're still trying to figure out how to make a motor run off of water. You know what I mean? That dude's got a sun and a bunch of suns and like, oh my God, right? Like, and he's managing all of that. And you think that he needs our 10% of our income. Like, come on, man. He's not the IRS, dude.
I'm going to pause you there because we are going to deep dive that once we get to part 2, but we'll do a quick break.
Cool.
We'll come back.